Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Oh, good afternoon, or good morning, listeners. It is 10:30 on a Thursday. I'm taking a walk between my two classes. Looking forward to a pleasant day of work. It is lovely today, unseasonably warm. It is November 5th here in suburban Chicago. We are still awaiting the outcome of the final counts of votes in the U.S. presidential election, and I'm happy to just be talking about some board games. So that's what's going on while I'm walking under this relatively nice weather. It's in the mid-60s, which is a very temperate temperature. This is something I'd expect it to be in like early September or late September, not early November. It's way too warm, but that's okay. I'm taking advantage of the warm weather. I thought today I would talk about 3 expansions that I have played recently and give you my impressions of them. I guess it's a shooting from the hip expansion episode. Sure. For those of you who are new, which isn't probably very many, but welcome if you are. The Shootin' from the Hip episode is a quick take on a game I've played once or twice, or an expansion I've played once or twice for a game. Usually I've played more than that. So I have 3 different expansions that I've encountered in the last couple weeks, and I hadn't really talked about them much on the show, although I may have talked about the first one a little bit. I don't think I did. And so I thought I would take some time to talk about those today. The first of these is the Backstage expansion for Shakespeare. Now, Shakespeare is a game that I love the theme, and I like the game just fine. Like, I think the game is fun, but I love the theme. I wish that I had more games of this theme, or I don't know. I was really intrigued by it, and I like the art in the game. Some of the components are a little chintzy, but overall, a top-notch theme for me. And because I like the theme so much, I was at a local game shop checking things out, and I found a copy of the Backstage expansion for Shakespeare. Now, this is not something I had seen in retail before, and I did not think was very widely available. It was a pretty reasonable price. So at the time, I don't think I had even played Shakespeare yet, but I bought the expansion just on the idea that, well, it was a fear of missing out, I guess. I thought it was likely I would not see it again in a store. So for $12 or $15, it was worth it. When we actually got around to playing Shakespeare, it was a little more on the complicated end than my wife and mother-in-law, who played it with us, enjoyed. Now, this was a couple years ago. When we returned to it now, it was certainly no problem for my wife to handle this game, which really speaks to the level of our family game playing having gone up. It still isn't her favorite kind of game in terms of her sense of how to compete in multiple tracks and that sort of thing. She's not as good at that as she is at other kinds of games. But we had a lot of fun with Shakespeare, or I've had a lot of fun with returning to it. We've played it 3 or 4 times this year. I think I've mentioned it in previous podcasts. It was one of my choices in the 5 for 20 challenge that we're doing this year. Let's talk about the Backstage expansion. This last time we played, we added that in. So the Backstage expansion adds 2 things. I mean, first off, it adds some cards across the board. It adds more actors. It adds more Queen's goals. And so those 2 things by themselves are most of what it gives you. If you haven't played Shakespeare, it is a worker placement game where you're recruiting actors. And it's not worker placement. It's sort of action selection. You have a tableau of actors and stage people, and you can activate up to 5 of them in a round. But the more people that you're going to activate, the later you go in the turn order. So the way the game works is that you have, in the first round you bid, you have these 5 markers that you bid, and the fewer of them that you bid, the earlier in turn order you will go. So if you only bid like 2, then you'll go first probably. But you only get to do 2 actions then. Whereas if you bid 5, then you're going to get to do 5 actions, but you're going to go last probably. And you always get 1 extra action of recruiting 1 card. So you're always going to get the 1 action of recruiting a card, and then you can use the other cards in your tableau. After each round is over, you have to rest all but 1 of the cards that you used. So if you use 2 cards, you can return one of them to the good, and you have to put the resting marker on the other one, and then you can't use them in the next round. So that's kind of the rhythm of the game. And then you use the actors to rehearse the play, which gives you sort of a sliding mark up these 3 tracks. And then you can use the craftspeople to build your set and sew your costumes, which you do through these markets that you're competing for. You also work on the ambiance of your theater. So there's all these sort of tracks that you're competing on. If I go much deeper than that, I'm going to do a whole teach of the game, so I'm going to stop there. Backstage adds a couple things that really make the game shine in a way that I wish that had been in the base game, because I bet that I would have, I mean, it's probably too complicated, but I bet that some of the mediocre reviews would have gone up a notch if people had tried them. First off, each player has a backstage area that's a secondary set that is being designed. It's a set designer thing. And if you add things to that, you get these bonuses that start accumulating. So the first time you add them, you get the 1 bonus. The second time you add another thing, you get the new bonus plus the old one. The third thing you add, you get the new bonus on that one plus the other 2. So there's this, and if you add all 4, then you get a second point. And this game is pretty tight on points. I think like a winning score is like 22 points. So 2 points, you get 1 the first time you add a thing to it, and then you get a second point when you add your 4th thing to it. Plus you get all those accumulating bonuses. So that's the backstage area. And then, like I said, they have a bunch of new actors that get added, and they have some new Queen's goals, which are the sort of end game bonus points that you can score. And then they have these helpers, and the helpers is the part of the game that gets really interesting and I think elevates it to another level. So remember I said that at the beginning of the game you bid up to 5 of these action discs, and you get to do as many actions as you bid. So if you bid 2, you get to do 2 actions. Well, in the base game, the other 3 discs that you didn't bid, you just set them aside. You don't do anything with them. In the expansion, you get to use those 3 discs to do something else. And this is the part I find really clever. So the expansion comes with these bonuses. And on your turn, instead of taking a regular action, you can take a bonus action. But the way you take the bonus action is you take these set-aside discs that you did not bid, and you put them on one of the bonus actions to spend them. And the bonus actions cost between 1 and 3 discs to activate, and they do different things. They give you additional bonuses. The really good ones cost 2 or 3 discs to activate. But that means if you're going to use one of those, you have to really underbid how many actions you're taking. By contrast, if you bid a high number of actions that you're taking, then you might only have 1 disc or no discs left, and you can't take any of the bonuses. But the bonuses are all really good. So suddenly the bidding part, which at the beginning feels a little scripted. I mean, it's a sort of, maybe I'll bid 1 less and get to go first, and I'll get that 1 actor that I really need. But often that part feels a little weak in the game. Suddenly you have this extra decision built in, which is the more things you bid, the less you can use the bonus actions. And those bonuses, they're really good. So suddenly that part of it really adds a lot of spice to the game, and I think elevates the play significantly enough that I really think it's worth a revisit, especially if you're somebody who liked the theme and liked the core idea of the game but thought it was a little weak. I think the Backstage expansion really adds a lot, and I'm very glad to have it. I won't play it again without it, even though it will make the game kind of a bear to teach. So that's Backstage, the expansion for Shakespeare. Shakespeare is published by Yastari Games and created by designer Hervé Rigal. It looks like Hervé, Herve, Hervé Rigal. All right, the second expansion that I tried was the Halloween thematic neighborhood for Welcome To. Welcome To, or Welcome to Your Perfect Home, is a flip and write game from Deepwater Games. Benoit Turpin, I think, is the designer. In Welcome To, you're flipping these cards that allow you to add houses and other features to this suburban neighborhood. It's sort of a push your luck, reading the odds kind of game, because each time you flip a card, you're adding a house number, and the house numbers have to go in order. You can go look up a review of Welcome To, or in fact, you can probably find one on this very podcast. I will post a link to it in the show notes. The game was really popular, and they have since released a number of thematic neighborhoods that alter the game slightly by giving you a different set of circumstances and rules to play around. There are 5 of these alternate neighborhoods. There's a zombie apocalypse, a nuclear apocalypse neighborhood. There is a Easter neighborhood, a Christmas neighborhood, and then a Halloween neighborhood. The Halloween neighborhood is the one that we played this time. We played it as part of Toggle's Tabletop Tuesday online weekly gaming session, which I had a great deal of fun hosting. So I hope that you will all join me for that at some point every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Central Time. You can find links to it on the Toggle webpage, togglegaming.com. So we played the Halloween edition, or the Halloween neighborhood, which works very similar to the other game, but has a couple differences. The map, of course, looks a little different. They have 2 extra sort of bonuses you can get. You can get tricks and you can get treats. Whenever there are a handful of houses, maybe 10 throughout the board, when you write your number in one of those houses, there's a little ghost and a little candy corn drawn in front of the house. You pick one of those and circle it when you fill out the house. In doing that, you then are pushing toward collecting a certain number of ghosts or a certain number of candy corns. There are thresholds 4, 7, and 10, I think. And when you cross that threshold, when you meet that threshold, you can choose to claim a bonus based on whether you have, 4, 7, or 10 candy corns, 4, 7, or 10 ghosts. When you claim that bonus, no one else can claim the bonus at that level. So it's the first one there can claim it. However, the bonuses at a higher level are better. But here's the thing, you have to be at exactly that level to claim the bonus. So if you have 6, you can't claim the 4 bonus. You have to get up to 7 to claim the 7 bonus. And like I said, only one person can claim the bonus at each level. Now there's an element where you can mix the bonuses. You can do, or where you can claim backwards. So when you get to 7, if someone has already claimed the 7, you could go back and claim the 4. But while you're doing that, someone else might get to 4 and claim it. So anyway, that part's really interesting. It adds a little flavor to it. And then the game also has different scoring cards, one of which you get to use during the game. That's the main difference. The map has a lovely sort of purple color with orange and little Halloween bits here and there. My favorite part of the design of the board is that in the original Welcome To, it looks like you're drawing some plans on an architecture table. And so off to the right, you see these like planning documents. In the Halloween one, off to the right are these documents that look like pages out of the Cryptonomicon. They're like evil spells. So that's kind of fun. Overall, it was good. It's not really much different than Welcome To, but it's a nice change of pace, especially if you're somebody who's played a lot of Welcome To, as I have. It's fun to have these variety of boards which let you tackle the game in a number of new ways. Now, I have passed up getting the new sequel, Welcome to Las Vegas. I feel like with the 5 thematic boards plus the original boards, I have more than enough Welcome to last me from here to eternity, and I'm happy with what I have. But overall, a good time. That's Benoit Turpin's Welcome to, the seasonal Halloween map. And then finally, the third expansion I want to talk about today is the expansion to the Phil Walker Harding modern classic Barren Park. I first played Barren Park in 2017 at Origins. I absolutely loved it and went and bought it immediately. It was so good. And every time I play it, I remember how much I like it. The base game of Barren Park is a delicious tile building race game. I say it's a race game because the first person to finish their park ends the game and usually wins. Not always, but usually. The game, it's a pretty simple game. At the beginning, you get 1 tile. You have a small board of 16 spaces, I think, or 20, maybe 25 spaces. Is it 6 across? Is it 36 spaces? I don't remember. It might be 6 across, but it's relatively small. You play your tile on the board, and if you cover up one of 3 different icons on the board, you get another tile. You take the tile from the market based on the icon you covered up, and that's your turn. On your next turn, you play the new tile that you got, and if you cover up an icon, you take a thing of that. If you cover up multiple icons, you take them both, and then now you have a choice on your turn, and pretty much you'll always have 2 from now on. Or if you fail to cover up anything, then you don't take a tile. If at the beginning of the turn you don't have a tile to play at all, you can take one of the cheapest tiles, but you don't get to play it. So you really do get penalized for if you let yourself end up without a tile at all. There's 3 competing scoring conditions that you're trying to achieve while you fill up your board. And you start with a single board, and as you go along, you add 3 more boards. It's a race game because every tile has points on it, and every time you take a tile, the points go down. So if I'm the first one to take one of the one of the black bear enclosures. When you go to take one, yours will be worth fewer points than mine. So there's a race element to it, but there's enough variety of ways that you can earn points that it's a really nice competition, but it's also not that hard. It's thoughtful without being brain burning. So Baron Park is one of my favorite light to medium filler games. It's a filler game because it takes about a half an hour to play, maybe a little longer if you have 4 people, but I love it. So about a year ago, the Bad News Bears expansion came out, which adds 2 modules to the game. There are monorails and there are grizzlies. My approach, we just did not have time, so I have not actually, until today, I had not tried either of them. And boy, do I wish I had, because these are great. My wife and I decided to try Baron Park, and we decided we'd put both expansions in. So we added the monorails and the grizzlies. I suspect if it's your first time playing with either of them, just adding one is probably enough. I liked adding both, but it is really... So the way the grizzlies work, grizzly tiles are these huge tiles, bigger than most of the tiles in Baron Park are 1, 2, or 3 squares. There's a few that are 4 and just a couple that are 5. The grizzly squares are 6 and 7 squares in these huge elaborate shapes that make it really hard. The way you get them is you discard these 2 other tiles. If you discard these 2 other tiles, then you get one of these big grizzly tiles that are always worth more points, and they fill up your board faster, which of course is how you win the game if your board gets filled up faster. The grizzly module also adds a 5th board in, so there's a bit more space to work with. These are really fun. They're big shapes, so you can fill up a big chunk of your board all at once. You get to take a bunch of tiles when you do that. They look really cool. They add a 5th kind of bear. Well, the game acknowledges koalas aren't bears, but still, it's just a delight. I really enjoy it. That's the grizzlies. But then we also have another module in the Bad News Bears expansion, which is the monorails. Now, monorails are this extra thing that you get to add on the cheapest tiles. The cheapest tiles are these green ones that aren't worth any points on their own, but they fill in your board. You need them. The way monorails work is whenever you put a green tile in, you can add a monorail tower to that tile. If that tower is exactly 2 spaces away from another tower, then you get to when you add that, you get to put a monorail link between the 2. And the monorail links they start at 10 points and they go down from there. There's 2 that are 10, 2 that are 9, 2 that are 8, and so on. So when you play your first monorail link, you get 10 points. And then if you play a second tower, you can make a second monorail link. But here's the thing. The second tower needs to be exactly 3 spaces away from one of the first 2. And it has to be at a 90-degree perpendicular angle from the direction the other one went. So you cannot have 2 links of a monorail go in a straight line. They have to turn 90 degrees. And then if you want to add a third one, the third tower has to be, again, 3 spaces away from one of the other towers at exactly a 90-degree angle from where the monorail comes into that tower. And you're never allowed to add 2 monorail links at the same time. You can only ever add them to the tower when you build the tower. It's really hard to build a monorail, but it's worth a lot of points, and you get to do it while you're doing other things. So that double whammy of a lot of points, and you get to do it while you're doing other things, means that the monorail suddenly makes Baron Park way more thoughtful than it was before, way more thinky, it gives you way more brain burn, as they say, and it is awesome. Man, do I like the monorails. As a result, those 2 together, the monorails and the grizzlies, make the Bad News Bears expansion just crack. It is so good. It makes the game way harder. I would never put those 2, or probably even one of them in an introductory game to somebody who hadn't played before. But as a way to revitalize what's going on in Baron Park, it is excellent, and I highly recommend it. So what expansions have you played lately? I have really enjoyed playing these 3 and talking about them with you today, but I'm keen to hear whether you've had a chance to get an old favorite out and add something new to it, or perhaps you've played some new games entirely. Head over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and let me know what you've been doing there, or reach out to me, Brendan, at Rattlebox Games. I look forward to hearing from you. And thanks for joining me today. I hope your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Days.